There's been a long outstanding battle going against artificial intelligence and the voice actors who work in not only video games but anime and more too. It's been tiring, with many of these voice actors that are a part of these guilds not being able to work for upwards of 10 months plus due to this ongoing strike. However, there was also a sinister underbelly of mafia-like tactics that were controlling the situation from behind the scenes. And a YouTuber showed it, and now these types who benefit from these sorts of things are trying to silence him. So YouTuber Mugen, this is his channel on screen here, he's been covering the strikes with how it's been affecting the video games and anime industry for a while now. It's completely crippled the entire industry, and that's putting it lightly. So let me give you all of the context and then we'll circle back to Mugen. It's a lot, but bear with me, you will understand everything and then we'll get there, I promise. So SAG-AFTRA, which stands for Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, is the union that reps about 160,000 performers, including roughly 2,600 voice actors and motion capture artists in video games. This guild is meant to protect these people, except that they've been on strike since July 2024, and it's been a total mess, and that's putting it lightly. The big issue is, of course, artificial intelligence. Voice actors are terrified that game companies are going to use generative AI to clone their voices or their likeness without permission or really fair pay, which is totally understandable. Because imagine spending years perfecting your craft only for companies to turn your hard work into an algorithm and then completely removing you from the process and then just never having to pay you ever again. That's the nightmare that these types have been facing. They also want better wages, more rest breaks, and safety protocols for motion capture work. Pretty much, they want to be treated like human beings, and the companies are thinking that they can instead circumvent this somehow and just change how everything has been working. Also, the strike has been dragging on for months, like I said, and it's not just the big studios like Activision or Electronic Arts or WB Games that are feeling this heat, because these American voice actors are straight up starving for work, most of them anyway. Because of this strike, they're barred from working on any union projects, which means no auditions, they have no recording sessions, they're just not allowed to, and of course that means that there's no paychecks, which I don't know about you guys, but have you tried to live without working for 10 months straight? Yeah, it's a terrible situation. I think we can all agree on that one. And some actors are taking odd jobs or dipping into their savings just to survive, but the union that controls everything are taking their sweet time, while the members who legally couldn't work due to them are now bordering on homelessness because of their ineptitude to make anything happen. So the negotiations first started a while back, but the interactive media agreement expired and then the talks have really never gotten faster. The union's pushing for consent and compensation and even transparency for the AI use that the companies want, but they're also pushing back. It led to a stalemate, and the ones getting screwed are of course the actors, while the executives pushing the strike are all sitting pretty. For a good example, one of the people at the top of the strike who has forbade thousands of voice actors from working is a man named Duncan Crabtree Ireland. As seen, this is him in a Variety article from 2024, which confirms that Duncan here, who's been forbidding voice actors to work until the strike is over, has a net salary of, get this, $1.02 million a year, working for a union that hasn't allowed its voice actors to work at all for almost a year now. As seen here, also from Variety, Duncan's pay has risen 6.5% in a year, and even his associates are making around as much as he is, while again, thousands of voice actors are literally sitting on the verge of homelessness. However, Duncan doesn't really seem to mind waiting as long as he can until he gets what he wants from these companies, because he makes his $1 million no matter what happens. He said in an interview as to how SAG-AFTRA will boycott the many companies who plan to use AI as, "It's a tool that's in our toolkit. These businesses run on both supply and demand, and yes, we've disrupted the supply of labor to produce those projects, but we haven't even begun to seriously disrupt the demand, and the holiday period is a particularly effective time. If we were to choose to do that, to deploy a campaign like that, and we've got the support of the AFL-CIO and the 15 million union members and their families around the country, on top of the members of the public who have shown that they actually do care about AI abuses because they can all see how it can affect all of us." Which is fine at first, but again, as these companies take months to come to a conclusion, people are going bankrupt waiting for these groups to come to a conclusion on all of this. So what's been happening in the meantime is that a lot of game companies have actually started to move their operations outside of the United States for places like the UK instead. You've probably noticed how a lot of games in the past year and then some have quite a few non-American American voice actors or these accents in them, and yeah, that is by design. These companies are basically packing their bags and heading to countries where unions aren't trying to boycott them like in America. Then you have other actors like Corinna Boetker, who voices Paimon in Genshin Impact, who has also alluded that they might be recast because of the strikes and how everything has gone down as seen here on screen. During this interview, Corinna confirmed her reason was not just due to the AI stuff, but also that payments from Genshin's owners, which is MiHoYo, also failed to pay her on time for about 7 months, although it's stated that MiHoYo is not directly responsible for the payment to its actors, but the problem still remains. However, very recently, the strike has officially come to an end, for now anyways, as IGN reports here. SAG-AFTRA suspends video game voice actor and performer strike, bringing industrial action to an end after almost a year. Although, as seen here, the strike is done mostly, but the people at the top like Duncan, who makes $1 million a year, have to still sign off on everything, so it could fall apart still, but it's pretty much believed that the strike, for now anyways, is finally over, which began, by the way, again in July 2024, when 98% of voice actors a part of the guild voted against the company's demands for AI. So while the strike may be over for now, it's not over for everyone who works at the craft. For example, this comes from Vice. Genshin Impact voice actors still striking against Hoyoverse despite SAG-AFTRA strike ending. But you thought it was over. Well, turns out not every game was actually a part of that deal that was recently signed. And Genshin Impact, one of the biggest games that is affected by these strikes, is actually still not covered by this new deal. Sean Chiplock, who voices Diluc in Genshin, said this via Blue Sky. Just getting this out of the way so folks can share when people inevitably start asking, no, the SAG-AFTRA strike ending does not mean that the Genshin cast strike is also over. Genshin is non-union and SAG's contracts have no say on it. The cast strike is an independent collective work refusal. Genshin cast members independently chose to join the effort to ask for better protections on the project, and it is up to them independently if they want to return without them. As an NU project, Genshin does not get the SAG agreement benefits. But it is crazy that it was confirmed by Genshin voice actors that their game was never actually a part of the strike to begin with, and that they could have worked because they were technically non-union, but instead chose not to because they wanted to stand amongst the other voice actors who were union and couldn't. Another person with Genshin is Erica Harlacher Stone, who voices Venti in Genshin Impact, and she was actually attacked by fans as well, where they demanded that she was recast for refusing to work on Genshin, but Erica responded back with this: "I'm trying to come back. SAG has been sending threatening letters to us. It's been very complicated. I'm coming back soon. If it had been my choice, I would have been voicing Venti the whole time." So to say this whole thing is a mess, that would be an understatement. This is also why you saw things like Fortnite implementing an AI Darth Vader voice. It was to circumvent this strike and everything that was going on with it. And another high-profile story that also rattled the cages was when Ashley Birch, she voices Aloy in the Horizon games, was devastated when Sony was leaked by insiders to be working on AI-generated voices of popular PlayStation characters like Aloy. As seen here from The Verge, Sony was actually doing that. There was an internal video, according to The Verge, that was shared showing a Sony executive speaking to Aloy, who was not voiced by Ashley Birch, by the way, but an AI instead, and it leaked, but that video has since been deleted, and I really can't find it anywhere. However, things like this are why the strike happened. Companies wanted to cut costs any way that they could, and then by removing these voice actors and instead using their voices funneled through AI, they effectively have these character voices for the rest of eternity. So in like 50 years, you could have Aloy show up in a game sounding exactly like she does now, and I wouldn't really be surprised if Sony has done the same thing behind the scenes with maybe Christopher Judge as Kratos or really anyone else. I'm halfway convinced that once Michael Ironside dies, Ubisoft will just casually announce that they have his like Sam Fisher voice AI'd in the background too, so that they can whip that out whenever they want to when a new Splinter Cell game needs his voice to happen. But this has also opened up another big problem, which is that due to these strikes, British voice actors have now become the new normal for many video games. Games like Destiny 2, League of Legends, and even Genshin Impact are feeling those ripple effects of these recasting efforts, with either characters being recasted or suspiciously going silent due to the strike. But when you go across the pond, the UK talent is just stepping up to everything, and they're not just filling these gaps anymore, they're actually stealing the spotlight. I mean, look at Ben Starr, you probably know him. He voiced Clive Rosfield in Final Fantasy XVI. He was also in Claire Obscur here recently as Verso. He played Kazan in the first Berserker 2. Actors like this are being used because, for one, they're usually cheaper to employ than American-based voice actors, and many of these actors, in case you don't know, they're not actually tied to SAG-AFTRA. I actually looked it up to confirm it, and yeah, Ben Starr is not a part of SAG-AFTRA, hence why he has had so much work despite all of these strikes going on. And the reason for the explosion of British-born talent is that the UK's voice acting scene isn't as tightly unionized as SAG-AFTRA is over here in America. Actors like Doug Cockle, he plays Geralt in The Witcher, and Harry McEntire, he played Noah in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. These are some actors amongst, many others who can work on projects without really having to navigate a union minefield, unlike the VAs in America have to, because they're not really crossing picket lines or having to boycott companies because, well, there really isn't anything to boycott in, say, the UK when it comes to things like this. Probably also doesn't help the American voice actors either that British voice actors just have more gravitas to their voices by default too. Again, this explains why Ben Starr is literally everywhere right now, because his voice is kind of what the industry wants more of these days. Not just because it sounds good, it does, because he's also cheaper and he's not union protected. Anime's also jumping on this train too, by the way. While the SAG-AFTRA strike didn't hit anime dubbing directly, the current video game strike is bleeding into the same localization work. Studios are also hiring British voice actors for English dubs because they're available, they're professional, and they don't come with the baggage of a union standoff, which again hurts these American workers time and time again. In terms of Genshin Impact, one character named Kinich was originally voiced by someone named John Patinaud, and I definitely messed that up, and has since been recast due to the strikes and all of that, to now be voiced by another guy named Jacob Takanashi. And English Genshin fans were mad at this, but Chinese Genshin fans, that's the biggest fan base for Genshin by the way, by a very large margin, they all rallied and has now, as seen here from Sportskeeda.com, Genshin Impact Chinese community calls for Hoyoverse to replace all English voice actors amid Kinich VA controversy. So to sum it up real quick here, Chinese players want everyone recasted because they deem that the English voice actors are being disrespectful to specifically Chinese Genshin fans, and English Genshin fans are attacking Asian voice actors for replacing the roles. And the Chinese players on China's social media platforms like Bilibili and more have decided to uninstall Genshin as a form of boycott to hopefully force Hoyoverse to replace the voice actors that are attacking people like Jacob Takanashi, who is an Asian voice actor. And as you can see, guys, this is all a big mega mess. AI has completely unraveled the voice acting profession and caused some really major problems that I don't think will be rectified anytime soon, if I'm being honest. But the fact that American-born actors have gone without work for almost a year while the British ones are just stealing their roles all of the time is kind of crazy. And in the long run, I would assume this will make voice actors be paid even less if they can just be replaced like this so easily. But okay, my God, that was a lot to explain. I apologize, but now you're pretty much caught up on this whole situation. So now let's finally talk about how these American-born voice actors are now trying to basically ruin a YouTuber's career for exposing them. So this again brings me to Mugen. So Mugen has a source somewhere in these Discord chats where all of these American voice actors fester in an echo chamber. And in that Discord chat, Mugen's source leaked what some of these voice actors were saying on Discord, which in turn led to a lot of people finding out what these voice actors thought of their audiences and how they were willing to boycott and ruin other voice actors' careers if they stepped out of line during that boycott. By the way, the term for someone working despite the boycott, they call these people scabs. And if you're labeled a scab, it means that you're undermining the union's efforts, and people will do everything that they can in their power within that profession to blacklist you from that industry. Which of course will mean your career will be on the line, and scabs are seen as traitors by unions because, well, they weaken the collective bargaining power of everyone involved. However, during this SAG-AFTRA strike, scab has been thrown around like confetti at a wedding pretty much. Again, that Jacob Takanashi guy, that new voice actor for Kinich and Genshin Impact, some voice actors, including Corinna Botker, that's the Paimon VA in Genshin by the way, she actually called Takanashi a scab, and then other VAs dogpiled on Takanashi for it too. However, Corinna Botker admitted to working on Genshin herself despite the strikes going on at the time. And her reason being is because she needed the money for medical bills, and I'm not kidding. Here's that clip, and oh boy, this clip, by the way, it caused a firestorm, but please watch it.
Hi, I actually explained this on Twitter, but I will explain it here. No No, I did not go against the strike, and here is why. So for those of you that don't know, there is a SAG strike going on right now that I am in full support of. Full support of this SAG strike, okay? One of the studios that is being struck against is one of the studios that records for Genshin Impact. There are technically 2 studios recording for Genshin Impact. I am the only actor that is recorded at the studio that is not struck against. Karina, why is that? Well, remember last year when I had to come out publicly to say that I wasn't being paid for 7 months? That's why. HoYoverse did the right thing, which was not only tell the other studio, you need to pay me, because it was a lot of money that they owed me, because it was 7 months of not being paid, but also HoYo moved me to a completely different studio. So for the past year now, I have been the only actor in Genshin working at a separate studio. And that studio is not struck against. I am also Phi Corps, so I can work on non-union stuff that did not used to be SAG. Because if it was SAG before, and I still continued to use it, work on it, being non-union, then yes, that would be a SCAB project. But if it was non-union to begin with and always non-union and not at the studio that is currently being struck against, that's not scabbing. Let's also be clear, I am disabled. And I have I already have a problem paying for a lot of bills, so I literally can't not work on Genshin right now, because that would mean that I would be homeless. That's just a reality of the situation, but regardless, it doesn't matter, because I'm still not going against anything. So, that's what's happening.
So she's technically scabbing herself too and calling other people out to be scabs when she's doing literally the same thing. She also tried to pull I'm, disabled, I'm autistic, so it's fine card, and then the hypocrisy was rightfully called out, especially since other VAs are pressuring colleagues not to work even on non-union projects because they all want to strong-arm companies like HoYoverse into becoming a union, which will probably never happen. But like I said, Muujin, that YouTuber, called these people out and leaked the Discord messages of these people calling others scabs and being mafia-like, saying if you do this job, we'll make sure you never work again, and etc. However, unfortunately, I can't show you those Discord messages because the people in it have actually been trying for days now to get Muujin's videos and even his whole channel taken down, claiming that he is leaking private messages that he had no right to, even though he got them from someone who was in that chat, which means that would circumvent him leaking them if someone involved with that chat willingly gave them to him in the first place. Does that make sense? Anyway, Muujin would respond to these voice actors trying to take his videos down and his channel by saying, well, it didn't take long. SAG-AFTRA voice actor extremists along with a negotiating committee member are trying to actively take down my video by mass reporting it. They're scared and it shows. While I won't show it because they're probably going to attack me too if I do, one of the higher up voice actors whose name is Zeke Alton does say at one point that he and others have created lists with companies of actors who are basically blacklisted based on their opinions alone. So, because Muujin leaked that, Zeke and his friends are now trying to ruin Muujin now because Muujin basically proved that despite the boycotts and the strikes and all of that, then underneath all of this is a favoritism mafia-like ran grift that just strong arms anyone who doesn't give in to the insane demands of these industry types. So despite all the corporate problems and the voice acting also having an ideology problem too, that's also killing the profession and scaring people into compliance, which is terrible and it must be called out because it is awful and it should not be allowed. This is how agendas get pushed through fear tactics pretty much. They scare people into believing like they do. And then if they do step out of line, they just get blacklisted. And that's across all the video games and then some, and it's terrible. Then Jennifer Hale, who's the voice of female Commander Shepard in Mass Effect among many other roles, said publicly that Muujin's coverage of voice actors blacklisting others was actually good for the industry. She said, transparency is good. Healing is most important. This has been an incredibly difficult and divisive time. There is much work to do to put our community and our industry back together. But then another voice actor named Kaylee Mills would then reply, you are enabling drama tubers and making people in your community feel unsafe, airing their frustrations frustrations while trying to navigate a really tough situation in a private space. I really hope you simply didn't understand how harmful this could be. You are hurting your community. Mugen would then respond to Kaylee with this, and Jennifer Hale's in it too. They just never learned, man. Kaylee, this was never about invading a safe space. This was about a life-ending agenda by SAG-AFTRA committee members that was only about behind closed doors. It's about facing accountability, a skill that you seem to lack. So, voice actors are also on Discord sharing how to also flag YouTube content, by the way, that shares the Discord messages, which is why I'm not showing any of them. I can't even show those screenshots because they'll likely try to flag my video if I do so, but the point of all of this is that while the strike may be technically over, the industry rot-filled agenda is still harming the profession, clearly. The politics are just festering in secret and they're just mutating, and when it does get called out, these types immediately turn to censorship. It's just not okay. It's not right, and frankly, it's gross. You can't say that you care about your profession when you're instead resorting to scare tactics and censorship because you're being held accountable for using your influence to blacklist people in voice acting. If you ask me, Mugen did nothing wrong, and the ongoing saga of the strike proves that this mess is not over anytime soon. The fact that these people are still using scare tactics to enact their influence, and it's clearly setting a terrible precedent that needs to end. And if the only way you can make what you want happen is through censorship, it just proves that your beliefs are not built on honesty or for the good of others, but only yourself and those you call your allies. But I hope this video helped you understand this massive mess, and I support people like Mugen for standing up and exposing these types. Besides all the other problems that are just plaguing games and more these days, knowing that these voice actors are also at each other's throats, like some modern reenactment of like Game of Thrones, is just sad to see. But that's what I got for you today. What do you think? Let me know. Subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.